Welcome to episode 8 of Whole Lot of Wolves. We're your hosts. I'm Joshua Buckley.
And I'm Paul LePage.
And obviously, we have a very big and nice Portuguese influence on Whole Lot of Wolves, and this extends to this week's guest. So joining us is John Batista from New Jersey. John's half of Heavily Opinionated. And so, John, tell us a little bit about how your Wolves support came about.
It goes back to 2017, really, which is when you guys signed Nuno, you guys signed Ruben Neves, you guys signed Diogo Jota, you guys signed Willy Bolly. I might be missing a couple others, but obviously you guys were doing a lot of business with Porto at that point. And I was upset to see Nuno go, to be honest. It's someone that I have a lot of respect for. He was part of our Champions League winning squad in 2004 under Jose Mourinho. He was a backup goalkeeper, but nonetheless, he was important. He was an important figure in the locker room. And so when I found out that he was going to Wolves and you guys weren't in the Premier League at that point, you guys were in the Championship, and Ruben Neves also leaving for 20 million, I was upset, I will say. And no offense, but I was in my head, I was like, this is crazy because Ruben Neves, 1 year he's playing Champions League and then the next year he's in the Championship. And I wasn't seeing the end game there. I was thinking, this is interesting. And Nuno's going there too. And we didn't really sack Nuno, but it was like a mutual agreement for him to just leave. And a lot of fans didn't want him to leave. But so that happened. And I didn't really follow you guys that much. What it was that you guys were beginning to win some games. Nuno was doing a good job. Ruben Neves was beginning to score some crazy, ridiculous goals. Diogo Jota was getting in some good performances as well. And really, I would go on the Portuguese news sources, and these sources are A Bola, Record, these three sites. And every now and then I would see a video pop up of Wolves or a goal from Ruben Neves. And then I just remember, next thing you know, you guys are getting promoted. And then me and my friends were discussing, we're talking about it, and we're like, guys, we might have a Portuguese team in the Premier League, because at that point, you guys already had Helder Costa, even Cavaleiro, and as well as the other names I just mentioned. And so that's where it first started. And then you guys shock me again and sign João Moutinho
And
Patricio. And I'm just like, this is crazy. They signed Rui Patricio, João Moutinho. And for me, João Moutinho is someone that, he's another guy that I have a lot of respect for because he helped Porto win the treble. In 2010, under the Villas Boas, he won the Portuguese Cup, the Portuguese League, as well as the Europa League with us. And he's a phenomenal player. We're talking about a player that at that point was an undisputed starter for the Portuguese national squad. And so for him to leave Monaco and to go to Wolves, it was a bit shocking. But at that point, I was like, you know what? I'm wearing the badge. I think some Wolves fans or some fans in general have told me, so you're only following the club because they have Portuguese players. And I tell them, well, look, you're talking about these players that have given so much to my club. I am loyal to them. And so I will support them. And supporting them means supporting the club that they currently represent, which is Wolves. And at that point, I started watching you guys, and you guys were putting in good performances in the Premier League. I really respected the way that you managed the club, the way you guys were doing business as well. It didn't seem that you guys were just splashing money like some of these other big clubs. You guys were doing it in an intelligent manner, slowly building up quality. And like I said, you guys have a lot of former players like Willy Bolly. I mean, Nuno really left, so he leaves Porto, and then he decides, under Nuno, Ruben Neves wasn't a starter. The starter was Danilo Pereira, who is now at PSG. He just played for PSG actually this past week against Man United. That was his debut. But he was a starter, and I always hated that because I wanted Ruben Neves to start. When I first saw the kid play, I thought he was like a Pirlo. And maybe that's an exaggeration, but his passing is phenomenal. And I thought, this is a great player, and he wasn't playing under Nuno regularly. And then Willy Bolly as well. And then Nuno goes to Wolves, and now all of a sudden Willy Bolly, he goes, and so does Ruben Neves. And yeah, that's where the support started. And then from there, I just started watching more and more matches. And I want to say last year I watched practically almost every match that I could. And so I think at this point, I like the club. I have to say as well, I got to say thanks to all the Wolves fans, because I feel that you guys have treated my compatriots with a lot of respect. And that's helped them succeed, of course, because it's not easy to go to a Premier League club and succeed. And they're obviously doing that now. We've seen good development from players like Ruben Neves, Pedro Neto as well. And of course, Diogo Jota was now at Liverpool. And I just posted a tweet the other day where I was saying Diogo Jota, he wasn't getting the hype that he deserved, the credit that he deserved, because he didn't come from an academy at the top of Portugal. They have the Porto Academy, you have the Sport Academy, then you have the Benfica Academy. You have players like Felix that are being sold for 100 million. They get all the credit. And Diogo Jota, meanwhile, is doing so well, and he was doing so well at Wolves. At this point, I feel really one of the pack, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, don't let your
That's-
friends make you feel bad for rooting for a squad just because there's a lot of your countrymen on there because hey, we're becoming very popular in the US with all the Mexican fans and it's because of Raul Jimenez and hey to us, the more the merrier. Like it just adds to the excitement and when you're building a brand, that's going to help generate that cash to bring in new players. Yeah, absolutely. We're glad to have you on board.
I appreciate that. Yeah, no, I think what a lot of people are forgetting is that it's not easy. Look, in an ideal world, Wolves, the starting 11 for Wolves, all English players. And at Porto, the 11 is Portuguese players. But that's not the world we live in.
Yeah.
At this point, especially if anything, Porto should have more Portuguese players. The fact that you have an English club relying on Portuguese, the fact that Wolves trust Portuguese talent more than Porto, that's an embarrassment. We obviously know that English Premier League is more competitive than the Portuguese league. And so you're going to tell me that Ruben Neves is good enough to start on Wolves, but not good enough to start on Porto. That's a bit interesting. But I will say I've read. So generally, I have a lot of followers, and I follow a lot of Wolves supporters, a lot of British fans as well. And it looks like most of them are totally fine with it. They love the third kit that you're repping right now, and so they're all about it. They love it. But there are a few fans that don't like. Maybe they feel that the identity of the club is being threatened because what you have is now you have these other people from these other clubs in England that are, saying, "Oh, you guys aren't British. You guys are Portuguese. Like you guys just go to Portugal." What I say to them is, I say it's business. We know that British players are expensive. Getting a good British player is not easy for a good price. It's not easy. Just look at
Just
Maguire.
ask Man U.
Exactly. Well, yeah, Maguire, 80 million. I'm sorry, he's not worth 80 million.
Yeah,
He's not worth
Sancho,
80
they're
million.
Dortmund's holding tight on the 120 million.
Because they know he's British and everyone wants a British player. It's going to make the fans happy, and I understand that. But what I think Wolves, if you look at the players that Wolves have recruited, they're doing good business. They're doing really good business. And I will say this, I think even before, the Portuguese influence on Wolves starts with George Mendes.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get away from that guy. No one can get away from him. He's everywhere. He's like an octopus. And George Mendes, apparently, I've read and I did some research, and it looks like George Mendes has been connected with Fosun, and I believe his name is Guo, the kind of the co-founder, right, of Fosun.
Yeah.
He's been tied with them since before Wolves were purchased by Fosun. And initially, reports, and this was also leaked. So I don't know if you know about kind of the football leaks that came out where Man City were about to get banned from the Champions League until the appeal came through. That all came from this Portuguese guy named Rui Pinto. You guys have you guys heard of him?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, the league stories, yeah.
The leak story where he's currently he's in court for it, and it's an embarrassment what's happening to him because he exposed a lot of corruption, not just in Portugal but in England as well with Man City, and he leaked presentations that Fosun had on essentially these presentations that they had, these PowerPoints. They were being sent, and these were sponsored as well by George Mendes. And what they really wanted to do was they wanted to come up with a network where they could buy players and then sell them for profit. They weren't initially planning on buying a club. Now, I don't know at what point they decided that, hey, you know what? This might be better business to just buy a club straight out. So it starts with George Mendes. And here's some trivia for you guys. So Nuno Espírito Santo is George Mendes' first ever client. Did you guys know that?
I did not know he was his first client. That's interesting.
First client ever when he was 21 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, George Mendes. Yeah, so they go way back, him and Nu. At that point, I think George Mendes was a nightclub owner. He was just he was seeing the light. That was before the Ronaldo deal. Yeah, so obviously George Mendes has a lot of influence, and a lot of people don't like him, and they don't like that agents have so much influence over football. And I understand that, I agree, but I think it's hard to get away with it, especially in England.
With all of that going on, and you mentioned about the identity of the club, at the moment you've got that's happening with Mendes and the influence and everything. But from all of the players that you've mentioned so far, it's really apparent that Wolves like to promote that no dickheads policy. And every player that's come in has been a quality addition, genuine, authentic, hardworking, and that really taps into the fibre of the fan base in the Midlands. Because if you play for that shirt, if you play for the badge, if you run for 90 minutes, if you absolutely bust your balls, even if you lose, that's what the fans want to see. They want to see those hard workers, and they want to see a tight knit squad and a team that play for each other. So I think that's one thing that so far has been executed to perfection, because regardless whether it's been Portuguese or even with Raul Jimenez, there's a definite mold of player that we've looked to sign. So far, it's bearing fruit.
I agree. I 100% agree. I say to everyone, I say, okay, if you have a problem with them getting Portuguese players or whoever, look at who they're recruiting. We know Adama Traore, for example, he was purchased for what, 22 million, something like that. I don't know if it's euros or pounds, but I always mix the two up. But I know he was purchased. We know that right now, if they want, and I don't know what's going on with Adama. I know they're working on his contract. Was that extended yet or no?
Not
It's
yet.
meant to be the next one, yeah.
Yeah, I keep hearing it's close.
I wonder if that has anything to do with why he's not starting.
So here,
Yeah.
I think part of this here is, as I was watching the game a little bit more today, and they started Podence and Neto. I think we all want to see Podence and Adama start at the same time, but with Moutinho not in the starting 11 today, Neto is their free kick specialist, so you almost have to have him in there. I think the hope is that they're trying to just use Adama as a super sub right now.
Yeah, he's an impact sub. He's explosive, especially if you're up 1-0, which is usually the type of games Wolves are in. Usually that ends up 1-0, 70th minute. The other team starts pushing up. Adama comes in, and you think that he's a great counter-attacking option. Yeah, also with Neto, Neto has surprised me, by the way.
He surprised all of us, yeah.
I didn't even know who the guy was. I wish I could tell you I did, but I had no idea who he was. I was like, who is this guy? Pedro Neto?
But back to that point as well, the whole fan base were, yeah, this is a favour for George Mendes. We've got to buy these two kids from Portugal via Lazio that no one's ever heard of. And we've got to do this favour. Otherwise, our supply line's cut off. But yeah, really, we've picked up Neto, and he's gone from that, 15 million, might have been something like that when we signed him. And he's easily doubled, probably trebled his value already. So again, that taps into the mold of player that they look to recruit, that makes an impact and appreciates in value as well.
Yeah, I agree. No one can argue that Wolves have done good business. They're doing well in the Premier League. Even at the start of the season, a lot of people were complaining. A lot of fans didn't like what they were seeing at the beginning of the season. But it's safe to say that a lot of the teams that spent a lot of money this summer, like Chelsea, for example, aren't producing results. And when you have a team like Wolves, who, yes, they spent some money this summer, but they've also made some money. At the end of the day, what are they, in 7th place today after today's result? Are they in 7th or something like that?
Yeah, tied for 7th.
Yes, I got hats off for Wolves. They're doing an incredible job. And whether people like it or not, I think George Mendes he's doing a good job for them. He's helping them. They're getting first dibs. If the player's agent is Jessifute, which is George Mendes' agency, so if the player falls under that agency, you guys got first dibs on them. That's great. That's perfect. So
are you a George Mendes client? Check. Can you speak Portuguese? Check. Okay, we want you.
And you know who it was before Wolves? It's funny. It was Monaco. Monaco's checklist was this. Is James? Is George Mendes your agent? Check. Did you play in the Portuguese league? Check. Did you play for Porto? Check. They signed James Rodriguez, they signed Falcao, they signed João Moutinho, and they signed someone else that I forget, Bernardo Silva from Portugal as well. He was part of that team. And they had a Portuguese coach. So they essentially, what you guys did was, okay, Monaco had the right idea. And that league is obviously tough to do what you guys are doing in your league. It can't do the same thing. There's obviously, you have more viewers in the Premier League. And so, yeah, you guys have really used that as a model, maybe. I think George Mendes even said, look, we can do what we did at Monaco and do it much better. And just look at you now. And I think that you guys, with Vitinha and Fabio Silva, you guys got two good players. I am upset that you guys I'm okay with Fabio Silva leaving. I'm okay because I realize that if he had stayed and he played Champions League this year, he might have gone to and when I say, I don't, no offense to Wolves, he might have gone to a bigger club, a club that's fighting for a top place, let's say
Right.
in a league. And then with that comes, look at the issues Felix is facing, right? He's at Atletico Madrid, and then he got bought for 100 million, and they're really hurting him. He's not starting every game. He's doing somewhat well. No one even knows much about him anymore. So I think, if anything, you guys did us a favor. You guys did the Portuguese a favor, because he's a great player. I think he played one game so far. Really, he's played maybe a couple others as a sub,
A late sub, yeah.
late sub, but he's only started one. I know he missed that one chance, and I saw some fans go, "Are we kidding me? What is this guy doing?" I'm like, guys, relax. He's young. He's gonna blossom. He's got time. Vitinha is the one player that I think you'll see. I don't know when, but I know Nuno eventually will throw him into the squad, and he's gonna start playing more regularly. And I think he's going to. I know Nuno's been trying to change the style of how you guys play to a more possessive style, more possession style. And I think that Vitinha, he's a creative cam. He's very good with his feet. He's creative. Today, for example, I think you guys could have used a player like Vitinha, because you guys were controlling the game, but it seemed that you guys weren't able to locate that final pass. It looked like there lacked some creativity in the middle of the pitch. At times, you have Podence and Neto going in the middle, and that helps. But that's what I felt. I felt like there needed to be someone there to make that last final ball, and I think that could be Vitinha.
Trying to whip it high to the far post. It was just too high for Bolly. Clearance comes out to Jimenez, who strikes it. Oh, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant from Raul Jimenez.
Let's discuss that Newcastle result today. Felt like a disappointing 1-1 draw, because I feel like Wolves deserved all 3 points there, except for that late gaff on the free kick. How you guys feel after that?
First off, let's go easy on Rui Patricio, because he's such a solid goalkeeper and he rarely makes mistakes. And I think what's on his mind, and I know the commentator said it as well during the game, he's got Andy Carroll in his mind.
Mm-hmm.
He's got that far post. And then I think he doesn't even see the ball at some point. It's hard to respond to that. So I don't think I've seen worse goals suffered by more expensive goalkeepers. I'll say that. We'll give him a break. But I think that Wolves, very typical Wolves, controlling the game, very conservative at first. They grew in the game. There was that one moment where Raul Jimenez, instead of taking a shot, probably should have passed it to Podence.
Yeah, right near the end of the first half. And you commented on that pretty quickly on Twitter, and I definitely agreed with you on that. That was, yeah.
I think that could have been a goal right there. And then I think the problem that Wolves face at the end of the day is that when you're in games winning 1-0, you always face the biggest problem. Winning 1-0 in football is awful, because you're at risk, because it's like in football, you're open to a Hail Mary, essentially. You got just long balls being kicked in, and then they won this free kick, which personally, I don't know if that's even a foul. I don't know if that's a foul. I have to watch that again. It looks like body to shoulder.
Yeah.
It looks like Cody probably was in the gym a little too long, and because as a result, he bumped him a little bit. But yeah, so I think 1-1, it's a result that you really see coming. When you see Wolves winning 1-0, you know that they're playing well, that they're having trouble getting that second goal. They were getting closer and closer to it towards the end. They eventually didn't get that goal. They suffer a goal. And then at that point, game's lost. So yeah, it was a disappointment because they were up 1-0.
I'll try and look at it a little bit over the course of the week and as a body of work with the Leeds game as well. So I'd have taken 4 points out of those two. But for me to really have this team kick on and grab that brass ring of fourth or even fifth and a guaranteed Europa performance, in a crazy season, it's these types of games at home we've got to be doing a better job in. And it's another year where we don't beat Newcastle at home. And all due respect to Newcastle as a side and everything, to make that transition into a credible contender in the top six, we've got to be picking up 3 points. And it's fine margins. It really is. You've already talked to if Raul could have played in Podence or a couple of other chances. Neto put one over the bar and he could have scored. Again, it's fine margins. Put one of those away earlier on in the first half in that game. I still think we'd have gone on to win it comfortably. But It's just making sure. I don't think we're far from being in top gear. So if that was us in third gear today, take it up a notch and put it into fourth, and we go in and win that game and win it quite comfortably. So I think take the positives, but look that we need some improvement certainly in the finishing department and maybe that creativity. But it's a case of where it comes in, and I think for me, if Nuno's pretty set on more of a 5-3-2 that it looks like more this season, is how does that shape the team? Is it Raul and a number 10, and then is there 3 players behind him, and that's where the creativity comes from? And I still think we're a little bit lacking from the left wing spot and the left wing back particularly, and if we have dynamism from that role, I think that will make a big difference in that formation as well. I just think back to, again, going through the game in my mind, and one of the balls that Neto put across the box in the second half, it was just crying out for someone on the back post. Kind of Raul took up a position where he needed to be, right in the centre. I think Dendonka was just behind him. I was just crying out for that player to be coming in and grabbing the back post and getting on the end of it that way. So again, fine margins, that may come in time. I still think this team, this newly refreshed team, still forming it. So yeah, hopefully we learn from today again. We build on the positives, but then we enhance where we lacked a little bit.
One of the real positives I took from today were the play of Semedo and Podence, both of them. I felt, especially Semedo, this was definitely his best game of the year, both in attacking and on defense. He really had some nifty moves, was getting some guys open. That was really nice. And Podence, he's just a handful for these defenders. It's just, he's so close to scoring or making that elite highlight play. It's just like one touch away from really being something special.
He had that step over. Oh,
Yeah.
that one step over where that was neat. That was neat. I always like Podence. I want to say Podence is another player that got away from Sporting. I don't know if you guys know this about Sporting, but this is how you got Rui Patricio on a cheap deal. Sporting, their players got attacked by their own fans in their locker room. Very crazy, very controversial. Their president went to court for it, and apparently the president allegedly was responsible for coordinating the attack. And that's when a lot of the players, there were a few players that left for free. And till this day, they're in court about it. But you guys were like, no, we don't want problems. We'll just pay you the sum. And then you guys got Patricio. I think Linz came from Olympiacos. Actually, that's right. Okay, I'm mixing it up. But Palencia, he's a good player. He's fast. I like him. I personally like Neto more. I think that Neto can play. He can even play in the midfield, in a central midfield position. And I think sometimes you see him in that position on the pitch. And I think that he gives more options to Nuno than, let's say, Adama. And as you guys mentioned before too, he's obviously really good as a free kick specialist. He's good with that as well. And he's actually pretty fast. He's surprisingly fast.
He hustles so much. That's my favorite part about watching Pedro Neto is that dude never gives up on a play. He's like just the Energizer Bunny out there.
Because you watch Adama run, and it's like Adama looks like he's. I even heard it from the man himself, where he says he's done some training to make himself faster, but he said he tries to reduce his speed sometimes. He tries to do training to slow himself down because he only needs about 70% of his speed to get past the player on the pitch, is what I've been told, and that helps him conserve energy and not get injured. But then when you watch him run, you're like, this guy doesn't even look like he's trying, and he's just. But Neto, yeah, he does have that hustler. You watch him, and it's he doesn't have it, and then he manages to win the ball and get past his opponent, and he's a good crosser, and he's good at dribbling. Sometimes it looks like he does a little too much, but I think with time he's going to get better at that. I also think he's an excellent finisher. Excellent finisher. I think in order for us to forget Diogo Jota, we're going to need Net to step up and score more goals. I think Podence can score goals too. I just think that I think eventually we'll see it come from Neto. And that's what Wolves right now are crying for. Someone to make the difference. Someone to score some screamers or some goals that just to help us, because at the end of the day, Jimenez showed up today. Wonderful volley. after he had two very awful shots early.
Oh, really bad shots early on.
Yeah, his foot looked crooked at that point. I was wondering what's going on with him yesterday. And then he shoots this volley, which was a good shot. I think mostly it was a result of the goalie's bad placement. I think he could have done a better job there, the goalie. Still, nonetheless, a good shot. And yeah, let's see what happens. But I like Pedro Neto. I like Podence. I'm surprised that Adama Traore is not starting, though. It's hard to leave a player like him on the bench. It's hard.
We're pleased to introduce a new segment on the Whole Lot of Wolves podcast. Professional soccer coach and former Wolfie Ryan Gray will be featured in our new Coach's Corner segment. Let's enjoy Ryan's breakdown of Wolves from a coaching perspective.
Here's a few things that I picked up from today's game in the first half. So, obviously, with the wing-backs, with Semedo and Sese, I actually think in the first half, Semedo was very good. With him and Neto on the right-hand side, Neto, if you notice, would come inside a little bit or drop deeper, and that would allow Semedo room on the right-hand side to push forward onto their left-back, I believe. It was Joe Lewis. By Neto tucking inside, it then allows Semedo to obviously push on and overlap, which if you notice on the other side as well, we say, so no, Sace isn't obviously a wing-back, but at times, with the three forwards, with Neto, Jimenez and Podence and Sace on the left-hand side, we were essentially attacking with five forwards at times, being supported in the middle by Dendoncker, pushing up a little bit. So I thought that was interesting with the dynamic of the wing-backs and Neto. As I say, in the first half, I actually think we played pretty well, but just didn't create enough chances. The possession was good, but I think that's definitely the way Nuno's trying to go now with changing the philosophy and maintaining possession more. But I just thought the intricacy with Neto and Semedo on the right hand side was very good, with him slotting inside and creating that 2v1 with the fullback out there. On the other side, obviously we were going down the right hand side a lot because we haven't really got a left wing back at the moment. But I thought Sace did okay. But what I thought was good with Sace and Podence and even Neto at times was they were quite interchangeable. Sometimes I noticed during the game that Sace and Semedo were actually ahead of Podence and Neto. So Podence and Neto were essentially the wing backs at times when we were attacking, especially when we lost the ball and in transition on defence. They were further with Neto and Podence than actually Sace and Semedo were, because they were pushing on so much and overlapping. But again, we just didn't create enough clear-cut chances in the first half. I actually thought Podence was probably... I thought he was the best player on the pitch today. The little skill that he did and absolutely did the defender was terrific. But I was surprised when he actually got brought off. I thought Neto would have been the one to bring off. When Traore went on Semedo's side, I actually thought Traore stifled Semedo a lot, because when Neto was on that side, obviously Podence went off and Neto switched wings and went left wing. When Traore came on, I actually think it stopped Semedo pushing forward. Instead of it being the 2v1 then, with Neto and Semedo on that right-hand side, it was just Traore going up against two defenders, and it was stifling Semedo going forward. So I actually think that hampered us a little bit with Traore coming on, especially on the right-hand side, because it took Semedo out of the game. I know it was mentioned a little bit on NBC with about 70 minutes. They mentioned about Semedo needs to change his wing-back role, and now Traore's on. I just don't think that connection's clicked yet between Semedo and Traore. I think they both essentially are trying to do the same thing, and they're both speed merchants, and I noticed they were just getting in each other's way today. And another thing that I noticed, especially at half-time with NBC, I actually thought they were pretty harsh on Wolves with the half-time chat that they had. For some reason, I just felt they were really harsh. I actually think we played quite well. First off, we've been patient in the build-up. Again, we just didn't create that clear-cut chance. But yeah, I was quite surprised at half-time with what the panel or the pundits were saying. But yeah, I actually think that we were better when Adama wasn't on the field. I know we scored with Jimenez's goal from the edge of the box, but I don't think that was through... That was anything to do with Traore. But yeah, it's a point. At the end of the day, I noticed, I would say it's probably will go down as a Patricio mistake. I don't think he had his wall set in the correct position. I don't think he was in the set correct position. He could have been a little bit more over to his left and allowed the wall to push over a little bit more. He gave that slight room for Murphy to be able to swing it across, and I think Patricio's more worried about smacking into the post than he was saving the ball, unfortunately. It's a good point. If you'd have asked me at the start of the game or on Monday with Leeds, I'd have probably, if the results were different, if we'd have drawn against Leeds and we'd have beat Newcastle, everybody would have been pleased with that. So with it being we beat Leeds and drew against Newcastle, people are going to be a bit disgruntled with it. But if it was the other way around, I think everyone would be quite happy. My positives from today were, I actually think the wing-backs were really good today, combining with Neto and Podence, and they were very interchangeable with each other. Saïss did a good job on the left-hand side, but he's definitely stifling our attack because we only attack down the right-hand side. And you could see Newcastle they obviously knew that, and they were trying to force us to the left wing because they knew that Saïss wasn't advanced enough, or not so much advanced enough, but he's not going to take a man on where Semedo, Neto on their side
we've
would.
Touched upon already, but it fits pretty well into this segment, and it comes from Stephen Williams, who's a friend of the show here. He helps run the Britannia Soccer Academy nearby in Richmond, Texas. And Steve asks, when are we going to see Fabio Silva get a chance to play?
It's tough because I think that not having Europa League, it's a missed opportunity to give some minutes to these other players that aren't playing as much. And obviously, Wolves, the Carabao Cup was another opportunity that now is lost as well. And I really think that it's going to take an injury to Raul Jimenez to see Fabio Silva start a match in the Premier League. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think it talks to setting up and being a 1-0 team so far, that if we got out the blocks a little bit quicker and we got 2 goals and we were comfortable in the 60th or 70th minute, you could bring him on and we'd start getting 10, 15, 20 minutes of him and seeing a little bit what he's like. We've not really, we haven't had that opportunity yet in the league so far, and you'd probably see from those games that he could pop up and get a goal and make a 2-0 into a 3-0 and everyone's happy. I think you're right that obviously Raul is so crucial to the way we play, and it's only going to be a case of him probably not starting for it to be Silva. Whether there could be any scope for a 2 with him and Raul, I don't know. The benefit that we've got obviously is his age, and I think he's willing to learn and understand the role and be brought into the system and learn it through watching and being part of the squad and training. So for me, it's not a massive deal at the moment, but yeah, I'd like to see him a little bit more and bring him in gradually and see what he can do off the bench.
You ready for my prediction? First start in the EPL will be Saturday, January 16th.
Oh, wow.
Against West Brom. Think about it, because that's going to be a time where Nuno's got to look at it and be like, okay, maybe I can give some of these guys a rest, because we should be able to beat a team like that pretty handily. So that's a perfect opportunity. And that with a lot of the new additions, it's usually about the 5 or 6 month mark where he starts letting these guys get in there. That was the issue with Podence. I could see that. I could see that being the first big start for him. What do you guys think of that?
It's one thing for us as Wolves fans, that last year we were crying out that the squad's too thin and we haven't got anyone on the bench. And now we've got that depth a little bit more. Are we going to become one of those teams that switch it up a little bit more against the lesser opposition? And we've not seen it to date because our squad has probably been too thin. We haven't had the scope to do it, knowing that the guys in reserve are of the sufficient quality that they can come in and be effectively a like-for-like replacement. So you'd hope that this recent recruitment strategy over the summer has been with that in mind, to say, guys, it's a squad game now. We've got the 11 that's starting, but the guys on the bench, they're pushing for a place. And it may go week to week that you may not start every week and you may be switched out depending on the opposition. It's not something I'm really familiar with in this era, certainly not under Nuno, and definitely really not the past 2 years. But who knows? We might have the strength in depth to do it more this season. Be interested to see.
The FA Cup's where it's going to get interesting, I think. If they can make a run of at least a couple of games, I think that's a good opportunity to get some of these young kids in there. I know we saw that with the one Carabao Cup game that we played, but those guys were also just on the squad. They're still super young. So the result there, you could see it coming. But I could see the first couple of rounds of the FA Cup, Nuno trying to see, okay, boys, you've been on the practice field for 6 months. Let's see what you got.
I agree. Yeah, I'm not worried. I think for Fabio Silva, who's very young, he's still a teenager. It's good that he has these other Portuguese, especially young Portuguese players as well, because I don't think that he speaks the language. I don't think he speaks English, and it's going to help him adapt. I think he should also learn the language. He needs to learn the language, and I'm not worried. I think he's going to adapt. I think it's going to be an easy. One of the biggest problems with foreign players going to EPL is are they going to be able to adapt? And that's language barrier. That's they don't know anyone in the country. Can they get along with their teammates? But I think what you're going to see is some of these players. It looks like a lot of the Wolves players, they even off the pitch and off the training ground, they're close knit. They spend time together and whatnot. So I think with Fabio Silva, he's gonna be able to adapt, and I think he'll do a good job when he does begin to get opportunities. But yes, with a young player, you want to ask the question: isn't it better for him to just play the games? For him to be on the sideline just training, I don't know how good that'll be for his development. But yes, at this point, unless Nuno is willing to go 2 strikers, which is not happening, I wish, but it's not going to happen. He'll probably sub in at the 80 if Wolves are down. And who knows, maybe if he scores a really good goal and wins a match for Wolves, maybe Nuno might rest Jimenez and start him. But I think it's going to be some time until we see him play.
It's probably going to be the same with Vitana too. And honestly, since he's only on loan, I feel like we definitely need to start seeing him come the new calendar year to see what we've got. And like you said, if he is that creative spark in the midfield.
Yeah, he's good. Yeah, Vitinha's, like I said, I'm not happy that we lost him because we needed a player with his qualities and we gave him up. And I know it's a loan, but the buyout clause option is there, which is 20 million, which is dirt cheap, if you ask me. And so I think Wolves eventually will follow through and purchase him fully. But I think there's space with Vitinha just because, as you can see, Moutinho's not playing as much now. And I think they're phasing out of that Moutinho era where Moutinho was starting every game. And now I think they realize that, okay, he's going to come on when you guys are up and help control the match until the 90. So I think that there's an option there for Vitinha to start. I'm surprised he hasn't started already, but I think he's going to get playing time much sooner than Fabio Silva will, I think.
And why is that?
It's just easier to put him in. I think it's easier to put him into the starting 11 than it is to put in Fabio Silva. To put in Fabio Silva, you're talking about 2 strikers, which means less control in the midfield, which is an aggressive approach, which I don't see him taking. And like I said, Jimenez, unless he gets injured. Whereas with Vitinha, I think I would like to see Vitinha start with just Neto, let's say Neto or Podence, one of the other, and then Jimenez. So you got Jimenez as a striker, and then you have either Podence or Neto playing alongside him, and they're dragging back, they're going into the midfield, and then you have Vitinha as well in the midfield, which is going to help give Wolves some more options in the midfield to better control the game. And then I think it'll help them as well attacking wise. Just like I said today, I feel that you guys were around the 18 for quite a bit, but aside from the wings, in the middle, it looked like there was no creativity in the middle, only on the wings. And that's a problem.
Now on to previewing the upcoming Crystal Palace game this Friday. And joining us is Matt Sampson, who's part of the Palace supporters group in DC. How you doing today, Matt?
I'm doing well. Positive result early yesterday always kind of makes for a good weekend. But thanks you both to everyone for having me. I'm looking forward to chatting with you.
Yeah. Speaking of positive, you guys have had a lot more positives than negatives thus far this season. So what should we look for in this clash between two evenly placed teams?
Yeah, it's hard to be upset when you're a Palace fan. You look at the table and more teams below you than you do above you. It's a rarity at times. Yeah, the club has made some moves in the off season. Obviously, not as much as everybody wants, but I think that's the case with every club. But got a little younger, brought in a little more scoring punch. Granted, it's hard to have less scoring punch than Palace did last year. 31 goals total for the season. I think they were the lowest scoring team ever to not be relegated from the Premier League. So far, 10 points and 8 goals through 6 games, pacing well ahead of where he finished last year. And I think Wolves are the club that, is, coming in the last couple of years and seen some success and been up there on the top half. And that's a place that Palace is, myself as a Palace fan and Palace as a club, I think aspires to be. Looking forward to a really spirited match and hopefully a good offensive show, because I think Palace is coming on in that regard.
So along with Wilfried Zaha, who many will be familiar with, who are your danger men and informed players that we'll need to be wary of?
Yeah, obviously, I think just to touch on him real quick, I think it all starts with Wilf. He's been so good this season and kind of bounced back really well from a 2019, 2020 year that was very frustrating, I think, for him. I think, and you could see it in some of his performances and for the supporters. He's been so good this season, though, even wore the armband a couple times, including against Man United, obviously a club he was transferred to back, and probably had his best performance of the season against them. So it all starts with him, but I think beyond Wilf, Michy Batshuayi really appears to be rounding into form for Palace. Joined on loan from Chelsea and was at Palace 2 seasons ago under Roy Hodgson. Didn't break into the starting lineup right away this year, and you could argue he only did in the past 2 games because Jordan Ayew tested positive for COVID. Wasn't really spectacular as a sub to start the year, but really seeing some signs of life over the last 2 games. He drew a penalty, albeit on kind of a iffy-ish call against Brighton, and then had a goal against Brighton that was called back on VAR, caught him offside by inches. But the touch, the burst he had, and the finish were all right there, and had an assist on Wilf's goal yesterday to make it 2-0. So certainly a guy to watch there. It shows how banged up Palace's defense has been when our best defender all year is a guy who played almost exclusively in central midfield a year ago, but Czech has been, played some at central defense at West Ham and has moved back there with a lot of injuries. Gary Cahill out, James Tompkins and Mamadou Sakho all have missed some time. He's been a real steadying influence back there. And then bouncing back to the midfield, I've been an Andros Townsend guy since I've been a Palace supporter. He's been Mr. Reliable for them in a unit that's been hit by injuries in all 3 other midfield slots. His goal against Man U really set the tone, let Palace play that match on its own terms. He's got a couple of assists this year and just runs his butt off defensively. And for a guy who plays a lot of pack in the defense and try to hit counters, that it's a kind of guy that Roy Hodgson really likes. So I think those are a few guys who really been on form for Palace so far this year.
Yeah, I watched most of the game on Saturday morning and think probably Townsend was comfortably man of the match. He had a really good game.
So what are the weak spots that you're a little worried about Wolves potentially exposing?
I think before I get into the particular spot, I think just the injuries that we've had and the lack of continuity that comes from them is a worry spot. Calling out specific, I think on the flanks, the outside of the defense there, Tyrick Mitchell in his first full season played part of it last year up from the academy, has represented well, but there's still those younger player moments, mistakes. One of the goals we conceded against Everton came when he just relaxed for like just a second there and got beat. That kind of started a chain that led to the goal. And on the other side, you're going from a youngster to a guy really experienced. Joel Ward has had a couple of struggles on the outside there. Misplayed a ball that led to Brighton's equalizer last week. Actually, Ward's dinged up, so a new guy at the right back spot, Nathaniel Klein, a Palace Academy grad who then was at Liverpool and is just back. He got the start on Saturday. So just a lot of mixing and matching in the back 4 that I think just has brought with it a lack of cohesion. And then the central midfield right now is a mess with injuries as well. James McCarthy and James MacArthur, they're 2 guys who are both dinged up right now, also kind of workhorses, but lack a little creativity in that spot, I would say. So that's another kind of worrisome area. And then I think thirdly, just sometimes it comes down to the tactics. As said before, Roy is defensive minded. I think there's been one match this year where Palace has had more than 40% possession. And I think sometimes that comes back to bite them. Against Brighton, they scored really early and they parked the bus after that. And my contention, they're as good as Brighton, if not better. Why are you not attacking more? It's also your biggest rival. And they played a strategy that one little misstep or one deflection can cost you. And it ended up doing that in a goal in the 90th minute.
So overall, as we look to wrap this segment up, what are your expectations for the season, Matt, as it progresses?
Finishing top half, I think would be great. Palace was in position to do that one game into the restart this summer, and then it just went to hell after that, losing seven straight before a draw against Tottenham on the final day. But I think overall, as we go through the rest, it's something they started in the transfer window of getting younger, not only in acquiring those younger players, but also actually playing them. I think keeping Wilf, there seems to be drama around him every transfer window. And as talked about earlier, he's so important to the club. I think 50 plus points would be a great goal to hit. And really, I think just you get into those April matches. And if you get to April and you feel like you're playing for something, whether it is a Europe spot or even if it's something that's just getting the most points the club has ever gotten in a Premier League season, I think you get to April with meaningful matches on the calendar. That would be a good accomplishment for Palace.
Would you like to hear your company's name in one of these sections, broadcast to a captive group of soccer fans across North America? Get in touch for information on our packages, including presenting sponsor, segment sponsors and paid partnerships on social media by emailing hello@wholelotofwolves.com.
What would be you guys' ideal starting 11, Paul? I'll let you go first.
I think today, if anything, it's not giving Nuno an excuse, but he's very loyal to his players and he's been loyal so far that we've seen, particularly with Saiss at left wing back. So I think that changes this week. With Martial coming on today, possibly he gets the nod. I'm not sure if he's wholly ready to commit to Ait-Nouri yet. I think he will be more of a gradual introduction as well, based on need on a game-by-game basis. So I could see him changing it up slightly. Definitely left wing back can be changed. I think Kilman, again, didn't put a foot wrong today. And
He's
that's
got to stay in there.
Could take. Yeah, just it's so crucial for that position that you learn it and you get accustomed to it, and it's very tricky now to change a defense when it's not really warranted. So for that back three, I'd keep. And then it could be one of these games that it's a quicker turnaround from a Sunday to a Friday. So maybe we do see the likes of some of the guys who have been on the bench get some minutes. It could be one that Traore starts. He seems to me a little bit out of form. He's come on, he's not really had that explosiveness. He looks of being not the Adama that we know and love. He did it for Spain, so it's not like he's completely disjointed this season. So maybe, there's something there that needs working on with Traore that gets him the start. Yeah, maybe we see a couple of new faces on Friday and we see a more refreshed starting 11.
I think for me, Kilman as well. I think everyone's happy with his performance. I actually wanted to bring up, maybe you guys have already talked about this, but I was watching the interview. They were interviewing Cody and they were asking about Kilman. Yeah, so they're asking about Kilman. And then that's when he was under the impression that he got man of the match. And they were like, well, Kilman got man of the match. And then he's like, oh, did he now? I was dying laughing watching that. I thought it was the funniest thing ever. And I love Cody. I think he's a great guy. But Kilman, I think he's going to keep starting. I think it looks like he's earned Nuno's trust. And I think when you earn Nuno's trust, he's going to also, be loyal to you. And I think that we'll see more of Kilman and he's going to be a regular starter. And then I think with left wing back, I don't know if Saiss can start left wing back. I don't think so. I think he's the one that's the change that we'll make. In midfield, it looks like we probably won't see Moutinho and Neves on the pitch at the same time again. I don't know. Doesn't seem like it to me. So I think then Donker's going to play a bigger role this season. Yeah, I think the big question is, will Adama jump into the starting 11? And I think so. I think eventually he will. Just not sure who you take out, Podence or Neto, but I think he takes out Podence. I think Podence can also be an impact sub. So I think I'm going to go with Adama to start, and as well as Marcel to start as a left wing back.
Yeah, I agree about Marcel. I think when you're looking at who else is going to start, he's going to start for sure either Neto or Moutinho, because one of those guys is going to be the free kick specialist. I could see him starting Moutinho this next game and having Neto come off the bench. I feel like his energy is going to be really good coming off the bench. So I could see Adama and Podence. I really want to see Adama and Semedo start to get something going. I want to see how teams would adjust, because you going to double team Podence, or are you going to double team Adama if they're both up there? Now, here's the question. Would this be an interesting spot to put in Vatina?
Yeah, I think you got to catch teams off guard. And I think teams are used to playing against Adama. They know that they're going to put 2 on him. And it's good because it opens up space for your teammates. But it looks like, I don't know, yeah, like is Adama off form, or are other teams just better prepared to play against them? Not sure which one you think, but yeah, we'll see what happens. I think Podence, teams aren't used to Podence. They don't really know who he is yet. But yeah, Vitinha, I think he'll play a role. So it's going to be interesting. They're obviously, I think Wolves have options this season. I think last season you really know, okay, this is the starting 11. It's not going to change much. I think this season there are options. And so it'll be interesting to see how, I think, if Nuno's choices will change as the season progresses.
Yeah, and the reason I bring up Vitana is because you listened to Nuno after the game today, and he was like, we can't be relying on Raul to do all the scoring. Somebody else has to step in there with some creativity, and that could be the shot there in the midfield. You're not really going to get that much creativity from the guys in the midfield right now. They've proven it. They're solid, and they do great defensively, but we need that offensive spark.
It talks again to being consistent with that more 5-3-2, and it could be it could depend a lot on the opposition that they're up against, but I would probably like to see something like Neto more with that role that's centralized again, coming from the midfield. Neves right in the middle as a defensive midfielder, probably be Vitane on the right of that 3, that it's a very attacking 3 potentially, but it's a little bit lightweight, so you really need to be sure that it's the right opposition to roll that out against. And that's a little unfair on Dendoncker because he's the workhorse, he's the water carrier that does a lot of the running, but we know what we're going to get from him, that the creativity is not going to come from Donk. He's going to put the runs in and maybe get on the end of one. Going to be a threat from set pieces, yeah, but maybe we've got some more flexibility, that we've got 3 in the centre of midfield who are distinctly more attacking, but it will come down to the opponents and who we're coming up against, because I think teams do spot the ability to swamp that midfield when they're playing us and put 2 big guys in there and try and squash us there. So I think it's going to have to be tactical based on the opposition that we're coming against on a particular week. Maybe this won't be it, but it may be an option for another side.
It's also the start of the season too. And I think a lot of teams, there are a lot of teams with a lot of new players. And then you also have new teams in the league like Leeds United. And so I think at this point, Wolves are more conservative. I think we can see them become more attacking as the season progresses, once they know essentially who's who, the identity of the other teams that they're playing against. So it's going to be interesting to see how that changes. But I think right now, Nuno's going into matches conservative. And then even today, I felt that they felt comfortable in the game, and then they started to attack and commit more numbers forward as the game progressed. So I think we'll see an interesting Wolves going forward, but as of now, they're probably going to stay conservative.
So here's an interesting scenario we should probably think about too. If Marcel is going to take over at left wing back, like we're all expecting, and Kilman's locked down that left center back spot, Saiz could move back into the midfield, and he's been showing he does have the ability to go forward by playing that left wing back role. What do you guys think about that?
It's got some potential, and we got some flexibility, which is good. And it's nice that we're able to talk about this as another option. But I think pretty much that Nuno's got his idea of how he wants to be set up. I'm pretty sure now that he sees more Saiz as a defender, and that's about it. So that's how I take it. But yeah, we can talk to it being an option that we've got that flexibility. So maybe.
Let's hear some predictions for Crystal Palace on Friday.
I'll go with classic Wolves win 1-0. Clean sheet, which will make Nunu happy. Win by a small margin, which will leave some fans a little bit disappointed. But I think 1-0.
My predictions have been absolutely atrocious so far, apart from the first game. So I'm going to put that negative hat back on. I'm going to say we'll take that 1-0 lead again, but let a goal in. So I'm going to go one each.
Oh, man.
I'm going to smack you on Friday if that happens. Actually, I'll have Clive smack you. That'll be even better. No, I like John. I think 1-0. Hopefully, and one of the things that makes me feel like they can get a win again is Matt was saying how Crystal Palace has never had more than 40% possession in a game this season. And I think I liked what I saw with Wolves. They had the majority of the possession today. I think this time they can at least get an early one in and then maybe park the bus and play as a little defense. But I'll go 1-0. I wouldn't be surprised with 2-0.
I was just going to say one thing because he mentioned possession, and I thought that was interesting because I just took a look at their game today, which they won against Fulham. And, yeah, they were a man up only at the 80th minute. But anyway, they won 2-1, but they had 34% ball possession. But they had 10 shots on target.
So it was all counters.
Exactly. And I think Wolves are really good at defending against counterattacks.
What I've noticed from really Project Restart, the back end of last season, when Palace showed up at Molineux and we won that pretty comfortably and we didn't really get threatened by them at all. And I think that's maybe gone into this season a little bit where they're a kind of team that's got some negativity around them. And I think there's a few question marks still over Hodgson. Is he going to be the guy that's really going to take them forwards? And I feel he could be the type of team that I'm still clamoring for that early goal. I think it could be one of those games that if we do get that early goal, then we go on and win it quite comfortably because they've had some good results this season, but they've been found out a couple of times as well. I think their result at Fulham on Saturday was because they played against Fulham, not because they did anything particularly special. So that paints a cloud over that scoreline. So yeah, we'll see how it goes, but I think it's a team that we could get at, and yeah, we could do some damage against if we catch a lucky break and things go in our favour early doors.
So before we wrap this up, I wanted to run a question by you, John. Who is the next Porto player that Wolves should be purchasing either in January or over the summer?
That's a question I pay. I'm just thinking about that because I can just see us giving up one of our other youth products away. We have two youth products right now. One guy's name is Romario Baró. He's really good. He's a midfielder. He's a holding midfielder, really good dribbler. Haven't seen too much of him. And Fabio Vieira, who just started recently. Then there's Corona. It's one of the three. I will say this. Jesus Corona, he has a good relationship with Jimenez. If you guys get Corona, that'll be amazing for you guys. That'll solve a lot of problems. He's extremely creative. He was the MVP last year of the Portuguese league. I know it's not a competitive league, but as you can tell, some players that are not even making bench in the Portuguese league are going to EPL and they're producing results. So I think that I'm going to go with Corona. I think Corona leaves in the summer. We renewed his contract for an additional year. I think they agreed that, okay, let us renew your contract. Let us keep you for another year. We'll let you go for a good price in the summer. So I think he leaves in the summer. And I think Raul Jimenez, he just renewed his contract. So that tells me that he's staying, or a team's going to come out and dish out a lot of money for him, which I don't see as likely.
I think he's saying, I just think he's too happy at Wolves. I don't think he wants to go.
Yeah, so with him staying, I do see Corona going. And I think that duo, that partnership, Corona's crosses, he's better than any winger you have right now. He's going to be better than him. He's like a little messy. I was saying before to one of my other friends that he needs to work on his finishing. That was one thing that he was lacking, and now he's beginning to score goals as well. So, yeah, I think Corona might go, and I'll be happy for him, to be honest.
Yeah, with Corona, I thought we were going to get him in the summer window, but then Semedo popped onto the radar. I do feel like if Wolves were confident that he wanted to play right wing back still, that he would be on Wolves. I think he probably made it clear, look, I'm playing right wing back right now for Porto because that's where they need me, but I do think he wants to be on the wing. I think if Adama goes, that Corona is the ideal replacement for him. What do you think, Paul?
I think still we've talked about an embarrassment of riches today with Neto and Podence and Traore, but I think there's still scope to fill a spot that Jota had. I could see it. I could see whether it's January or whether it's in the summer that we do bring someone in. I think the only not that it's necessarily a downside, what's for Corona's disadvantage with the Wolves that he's a little too close to 30. I know we signed Jimenez when he was 28, but that was for a dedicated position, really. That was someone so important to the way Wolves play that regardless of age, that was the player that was needed. I think that's one on the side of a no for Corona, but it would be exciting for sure.
Yeah, he has a 30 million release clause. That's something that I think Wolves have already paid. They can afford that. So it's going to come down to whether Nuno still wants him. Nuno knows the player. So I think that's a plus. Jimenez being there, that's a plus. We'll see how many offers come in for him and if that's really where he wants to go.
Yeah, I think Jimenez could go to him and be like, look, man, I'm a god in Wolverhampton right now. You come here, they will sing songs about you, and the Mexican fans are already gravitating towards Wolves. I think that would seal the deal. So this is another one. If the marketing department gets involved with it a little bit, I could see the deal getting done. And then another Mexico-looking third kit next year. Yeah.
Better. I mean, a lot of teams come up with these third kits that have absolutely no meaning. And this one, the one that you're wearing right now, that was record-breaking sales.
Oh, yeah. It was brilliant marketing.
Well, yeah, it was genius. Some fans don't like it. I'm like, it's a no-brainer, guys. It's a no-brainer. But yeah, so should be interesting. I guess we'll have to hold out and see what happens.
All right, John. So as we wrap this up, go ahead and let listeners know how they can get in touch with you. I know I enjoy following you on Twitter.
Yeah, so you can follow my personal Twitter. It's FC Porto NJ. I also am on the Heavily Opinionated podcast. So you can search that up on YouTube, Heavily Opinionated, or you can search up on Twitter. The tag is HVLY, Opinionated, and that's our Twitter. So go ahead and check us out. We definitely have interesting discussions. We took a bit of a break, but we'll be right back pretty soon with more videos to come.
We'll share all of those contact details out as well, John. But thanks so much for making the time to come on. We hope to welcome you back on Whole Lot of Wolves in the future for sure.
Yeah, appreciate it, Paul. Yeah, thank you for having me, guys.
That's one thing that I've really liked about this week's show is that your pronunciations of our players' names have been perfect. So they don't get butchered with Black Country at all. It's how they should be pronounced.
Or my Southern accent.
Yeah, it's funny hearing everyone's pronunciation of different names, especially the Portuguese ones. I hear the commentators butcher them all the time, and me and my friends always laugh. It is what it is. No big deal.
Listeners, thanks for your continued support of Whole Lot of Wolves. Please subscribe if you're listening to us for the first time. Like the podcast, share it. Give us a 5-star review on your podcast listening platform of choice. This helps us tremendously with our wider exposure. Again, thanks for listening. Tune in next week. Up the Wolves. See you soon.